Some doors are never meant to be opened at midnight, unless fate is the one knocking. At exactly 12:03 a.m., the deep silence surrounding Nathaniel Brooks' estate was broken by 3 soft knocks against the massive oak front door. They weren't desperate. They weren't hurried. They were patient, almost polite, as though whoever stood outside believed someone would answer, no matter how late the hour. Nathaniel lifted his eyes from the untouched glass of bourbon resting beside the fireplace. The flames flickered across polished marble floors, expensive paintings, and walls that had forgotten what laughter sounded like. His mansion overlooked the dark Connecticut shoreline, where the Atlantic wind whispered through bare trees, carrying the last chill of early March. The city lights shimmered miles away, but inside the enormous house, silence had become the only permanent resident. At 45, Nathaniel had built one of the country's largest investment firms, appeared on magazine covers, and owned more homes than he cared to count. Yet every evening ended the same way. A dinner prepared for one. A fire burning for no one. A home so large it echoed whenever he walked across it. He glanced toward the security monitor beside the entrance. The cameras showed only a tiny figure standing beneath the porch light. No adults. No car. No movement beyond the girl herself. His head of security would normally intercept any visitor long before they reached the front steps, but tonight the gate logs showed nothing unusual. Somehow, she had simply appeared. Nathaniel frowned and walked toward the door, the old wooden floor beneath his feet creaking louder than usual. When he unlocked it, cold night air slipped inside. Standing on the porch was a little girl no older than 7. Her blonde hair rested neatly beneath a faded knit cap. She wore an oversized beige coat several sizes too large, white sneakers damp from the night dew, and beside her sat a small blue suitcase with worn corners. In both hands she carefully held a tiny wooden music box wrapped with a pale blue ribbon. She looked up with remarkably calm blue eyes. There was no fear in them. Only quiet determination. "Are you Mr. Nathaniel Brooks?" she asked softly. He nodded without speaking. She offered the music box toward him but did not let go. "Mom told me not to let anyone open this until morning." Nathaniel blinked. "Where's your mother?" The little girl lowered her eyes for only a second before answering with gentle certainty. "She said if she couldn't wake up tomorrow, I should come here tonight." The words settled over the porch like the cold itself. Nathaniel searched the empty driveway, the quiet road, the shadows beneath the old maple trees. No headlights. No footsteps. No sign that anyone else had ever been there. The girl adjusted the handle of her blue suitcase with both hands and gave him the smallest smile. "May I wait inside until the sun comes up?" For reasons he couldn't explain, every instinct telling him to ask questions, call someone, or close the door faded beneath the simple honesty in her voice. He stepped aside without another word. As she crossed the threshold, the warmth of the house met the cool night air, and somewhere behind them, the heavy front door closed with a quiet sound that neither of them realized would separate the life Nathaniel had always known from the one that was about to begin. Lily stepped quietly across the polished hardwood floor, stopping just inside the entrance as Nathaniel locked the heavy front door behind them. The mansion seemed even larger now that another heartbeat filled its silence. She did not wonder or ask questions. She simply stood beside her small blue suitcase, holding the wooden music box against her coat as though it belonged exactly where it was. Nathaniel looked at the child for a long moment before clearing his throat. "You must be hungry." She gave a tiny nod that was almost too small to notice. He led her toward the kitchen, where soft pendant lights reflected across white marble countertops. The room had been designed for dinner parties and holiday gatherings that had never happened. Cabinets stretched to the ceiling. Professional appliances gleamed beneath warm lighting. Yet only one place at the Long Island had ever been used. Nathaniel opened the refrigerator, surprised by how little there was that resembled comfort. He finally found a carton of tomato soup, fresh bread, butter, and a small container of strawberries. Within minutes, the gentle sound of soup warming on the stove replaced the silence that usually ruled the house after midnight. Lily climbed carefully onto one of the tall stools, her feet swinging several inches above the floor. She rested the music box on her lap without taking her hands away from it. Nathaniel noticed she had still not removed her coat. "You can hang it by the fireplace if you would like," he offered. She smiled politely. "I like keeping it on until morning." He did not press her. When the soup was ready, he placed a steaming bowl in front of her together with slices of warm buttered bread. She whispered, "Thank you, Mr. Brooks," before taking the smallest careful spoonful, as though she had learned not to waste anything. Nathaniel poured himself coffee even though he knew sleep had already become impossible. He watched the little girl eat in complete silence. She never rushed. She never looked around in amazement at the enormous kitchen. Instead, her eyes occasionally drifted toward the tall grandfather clock near the hallway. Every few minutes she quietly checked the time. Finally he asked, "Are you waiting for someone?" She looked at the clock again before answering. "Morning." The single word lingered between them. "Because of the music box?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Mom said it has to stay closed until the sun is up. She made me promise." Nathaniel studied the small wooden box more carefully. It looked old, its polished walnut surface worn smooth from years of careful hands. A tiny brass key rested in the lock, tied with a faded blue ribbon that matched the one wrapped around it. Whatever was inside seemed important enough for a mother to trust it to her young daughter. When Lily finished eating, she carefully folded her napkin and thanked him again. "May I sleep here?" she asked softly. Nathaniel showed her to the living room, where the fire still glowed beneath the stone mantel. He spread a thick wool blanket across the oversized sofa and placed another folded blanket nearby. Lily set the music box beside the pillow before slipping off her damp sneakers. Her blue suitcase remained unopened at her feet. Within moments she had curled beneath the blanket, one hand resting lightly on the music box as though protecting it even in her dreams. Nathaniel dimmed the lights and stood quietly across the room. He realized he still knew almost nothing about the little girl sleeping under his roof. Yet somehow the mansion no longer felt completely empty. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees until the first faint hint of dawn slowly began making its way toward the horizon, carrying with it answers that neither of them could yet imagine. The first rays of morning slipped through the tall windows, painting long ribbons of golden light across the living room floor. Nathaniel had not slept. He sat quietly in the leather chair beside the fireplace with a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold, watching the flames surrender to glowing embers. Across the room, Lily was still asleep beneath the wool blanket, one small hand resting gently on the wooden music box exactly where it had been hours before. When the grandfather clock chimed 7, her eyes slowly opened. She looked toward the window, then at the music box, and smiled with quiet relief. "It is morning now," she whispered. Nathaniel nodded. "You said it could finally be opened." Lily carefully sat upright and lifted the little box into her lap. Instead of opening it herself, she carried it across the room and held it out to him with both hands. "Mom said you should be the first one to see what is inside." Nathaniel accepted it with unexpected hesitation. The walnut surface felt smooth from years of careful use. The faded blue ribbon slipped away easily, revealing a tiny brass latch. He paused for a long moment before gently lifting the lid. There was no melody. Instead, resting inside on soft blue velvet, lay a neatly folded envelope, a small silver key attached to a white tag, a flash drive, and a photograph that immediately stole the air from his lungs. He picked up the picture with trembling fingers. It showed a younger version of himself standing beneath the bright autumn leaves of a New England park, laughing beside a woman whose smile he had never truly forgotten. Emily Carter. 20 years seemed to disappear in a heartbeat. Every memory he had carefully buried returned all at once. The afternoon they shared coffee after getting caught in the rain. The tiny bookstore where she insisted every good story deserved a second ending. The engagement ring he had planned to give her before life unexpectedly carried them in different directions. Nathaniel lowered himself into the nearest chair without taking his eyes off the photograph. Lily watched him quietly. "You knew my mommy," she said with complete certainty. He could only whisper her name. "Emily." Lily nodded. "She smiled every time she said your name." Nathaniel carefully unfolded the envelope. Across the front, written in familiar handwriting he recognized instantly, were 6 simple words. "For Nathaniel. Please read this first." He stared at the letters for several seconds before opening it. The paper carried the faint scent of lavender, almost as though it had preserved a small piece of the past. His eyes filled as he began reading the first line. "Dear Nathaniel, if this letter has reached your hands, then Lily found the only person I ever believed would keep a promise even after all these years." He looked up at the little girl standing beside him. She was not watching the letter. She was watching his face, quietly waiting, trusting completely that whatever happened next would be exactly what her mother had hoped for. Nathaniel read the letter 3 times before he trusted himself to speak. Emily's handwriting moved across the pages with the same unhurried care he remembered from the notes she used to leave tucked inside library books they shared. She had written it knowing she would not be present when he read it, which meant every sentence had been chosen with the same deliberate love she brought to everything she did. She explained that she had been ill for nearly 2 years and had spent most of that time making arrangements rather than allowing herself to be afraid. She had contacted an attorney, organized her finances, settled what could be settled. She had written to 3 people before she wrote to Nathaniel, and the other 2 had not answered. She wrote that she did not blame them. Life moved quickly and people moved with it. She wrote that she had thought about Nathaniel often over the years, not with regret but with the particular tenderness reserved for things that were real and good even when they were brief. She wrote that Lily was the most remarkable person she had ever known, which she acknowledged was something all mothers believed and which she believed more than most because she had the evidence to support it. She wrote that Lily did not need rescuing. She needed continuity. She needed someone who would understand that her questions deserved real answers and that her silences deserved the same respect as her words. She wrote that she had chosen Nathaniel not because he was successful or because he could provide things money could provide, but because she remembered the afternoon in the bookstore when he had spent 40 minutes helping a stranger find a book they could not remember the title of, and because that was the kind of person Lily needed to know existed in the world. At the bottom of the last page, beneath her signature, Emily had written one final line in slightly smaller letters, as though she had added it after sealing the envelope and then opened it again because it needed to be said. She wrote she already knows how to love the world well. She just needs someone to show her the world is worth loving back. Nathaniel folded the letter along its original creases and held it in both hands for a long time. Lily had returned to the sofa and was watching him with the patient gray eyes that had looked at him from the doorway the night before. She did not ask what the letter said. She did not need to. Whatever her mother had written, this was the part that came after it, and Lily appeared entirely prepared for whatever that meant. The silver key from the music box fit the lock of a safe deposit box at a bank in the town where Emily had lived for the last 4 years. Nathaniel learned this from the attorney whose name and address were printed on the white tag attached to the key. He called the number that morning while Lily sat at the kitchen island eating toast with strawberry jam, her blue suitcase still resting unopened beside the sofa. The attorney was a woman named Patricia Holloway who answered with the composed efficiency of someone who had been waiting for this specific call. She confirmed that Emily had made arrangements several months earlier. She confirmed that Nathaniel's name appeared on the relevant documents as the person Emily had designated. She did not offer opinions. She simply provided information in the order it was needed, which Nathaniel appreciated more than he could express at that moment. He asked about immediate practical matters first. Lily's school. Her medical records. Her belongings at Emily's apartment. Patricia Holloway had already arranged all of it. A moving company would arrive at the apartment the following Wednesday. A transfer of enrollment had been prepared pending his confirmation. Lily's pediatrician had sent her complete medical history to a practice 30 minutes from the estate. Everything that could be anticipated had been anticipated. When he ended the call, Nathaniel sat quietly at the far end of the kitchen island. Lily was drawing something on the notepad he had placed near the fruit bowl, using the single blue pen she had produced from the front pocket of her blue suitcase. She drew with focused concentration, the tip of her tongue visible between her teeth the way children look when something requires their complete attention. He asked what she was drawing. She turned the notepad so he could see. It was the front door of the mansion, rendered with surprising accuracy for a 7-year-old, with the porch light drawn as a careful circle above the entrance. She had drawn herself standing on the step. Beside the door, she had drawn a figure she had given a suit jacket and a coffee cup. She had not drawn him looking out. She had drawn him already holding the door open. Nathaniel looked at the drawing for a long time. Then he looked at the little girl who had made it. He asked if she would like to see the rest of the house. She capped her blue pen with a decisive click and slid off the stool. She left the drawing on the island where he could see it from anywhere in the kitchen. He understood this was intentional. The weeks that followed did not arrange themselves neatly. Nathaniel had spent 20 years building systems designed to minimize uncertainty, and a 7-year-old living in his house dismantled most of them with cheerful efficiency. Lily woke before 6 every morning and was usually already at the kitchen island with her notepad by the time he came downstairs. She drew constantly. Landscapes. Animals. Floor plans of rooms she found interesting. Detailed maps of the estate grounds that were more accurate than the one his property manager kept in the office filing cabinet. She asked questions without preamble, moving from the life cycle of monarch butterflies to the function of compound interest to why certain stars appeared blue rather than white, accepting his answers with the same evaluating patience she brought to everything before storing them away somewhere and moving on. She attended her new school without complaint, though she observed on the third afternoon that the reading curriculum was approximately 18 months behind where she had been. Nathaniel mentioned this to the principal on Friday. By the following Monday, an adjusted plan had been prepared. He hired a tutor for weekend mornings not because Lily needed remediation but because she needed conversation that matched the speed of her thinking, and he recognized the difference. He reorganized his schedule so that he was home before 6 every evening. His assistant noted the change without comment, which he appreciated. Some evenings they ate at the long dining table that had spent years serving no purpose. Other evenings they ate at the kitchen island because Lily said the dining room felt like it was waiting for something and she preferred rooms that felt like they had already arrived. He did not tell her that the dining room had felt that way to him for years as well. He simply moved the placemats to the island and did not explain it to anyone. On the 4th Friday of her first month at the estate, Lily placed the wooden music box in the center of the kitchen island between their dinner plates. She had wound the brass key at some point during the day, and when she lifted the lid, a small clear melody played for the first time since she had arrived. It was simple and unhurried, the kind of tune that sounded as though it had always existed and had simply been waiting for the right room to play in. Nathaniel recognized it immediately. It was the melody from the small music box he had once given Emily in a bookstore on a rainy October afternoon, the one she had said sounded like the beginning of something. He looked across the island at Lily. She was watching the music box with an expression that suggested she had known exactly what sound would come out of it and had been saving the moment. "Mom said you would know this song," she said quietly. He nodded without speaking. The melody played to its end. Outside, the Connecticut shoreline moved under the early spring wind, and somewhere in the distance the Atlantic carried its quiet sound toward the shore, and the mansion that had echoed for too long simply held the moment without asking for anything more. Spring arrived fully before either of them marked its passing. The grounds of the estate transformed over several weeks from bare soil and gray branches into something considerably more alive, and Lily observed this with the same methodical attention she brought to everything. She identified 17 species of birds by sound before she could see them from the windows, which she recorded in a separate notebook she designated specifically for the estate's natural inventory. She began spending afternoons outside with the focused purposefulness of a person conducting fieldwork, and Nathaniel sometimes watched from the library window as she moved along the garden paths with her notebook, stopping to crouch beside something in the grass or lifting her eyes suddenly toward a sound in the tree line above. He recognized the quality of her attention. It was the kind that did not miss things. On a Saturday morning in late April, she asked if he had kept any photographs of her mother. He had not expected the question, though he understood it was reasonable. He told her honestly that he had photographs from a time before he and Emily had gone different directions, and that he was willing to show her if she would like to see them. She said yes. He brought 3 photographs from the storage box in the library closet where he had placed them years ago without looking at them again. They sat together on the back terrace in the morning sun, and he answered every question she asked about each image with complete honesty, including the ones that required him to admit things he would not have admitted to any adult he knew. She listened without interrupting, which was one of her most consistent qualities. When he had finished, she looked at the photographs for a long quiet moment before handing them back. She said you were the kind of person who told the truth even when it cost something, Lily said. He accepted this without comment. They sat in the morning sun a while longer. A red-tailed hawk crossed the sky above the tree line. Lily tracked it with her eyes until it disappeared. Would it be all right, she said finally, if I put one of these on my bookshelf? He told her she could keep all 3. She took them with the careful gravity of someone receiving something intended to last. He watched her carry them inside, and the morning continued around the empty terrace with the ordinary sounds of a world that had decided, without ceremony, to simply keep going. By summer, Lily had reorganized her bedroom twice, catalogued most of the estate library, and developed a Saturday morning routine that involved waking before dawn to record bird activity in the hour before sunrise. Nathaniel had begun leaving a thermos of hot chocolate outside her door on those mornings, which she accepted without comment but which he had noticed she always brought back to the kitchen empty. The estate had stopped echoing. He was not certain exactly when this had happened, only that at some point the sound of a door closing or footsteps in a hallway had begun to suggest the presence of someone rather than the absence of everyone. His board of directors had commented that he seemed more present in meetings. His assistant had stopped checking his location twice a day. His physician, at the annual appointment in June, noted that several markers she had been monitoring for 3 years had moved in a direction she described as encouraging. He did not explain any of this to anyone. In July, a letter arrived from Patricia Holloway's office confirming that all legal arrangements Emily had established were fully resolved and that no further action was required from any party. Nathaniel placed the letter in the same file as Emily's letter from the music box and the photograph from the park, which now lived in a frame on his desk rather than in a storage box in the library closet. On the last Sunday of August, Lily asked him a question he had not anticipated. She asked whether he had been happy before she came. He sat with the question for a long moment before answering truthfully. He said he had been functional, which was different. She nodded as though this confirmed something she had already suspected. She asked if he was happy now. He told her that he was, and that it surprised him somewhat, and that he thought she deserved to know that the surprise was not because of her specifically but because he had stopped expecting it in general. She appeared to find this answer satisfactory. She returned to the book she had been reading. He returned to the report he had been reviewing. The late summer afternoon continued around them in the particular quiet that belongs to rooms where 2 people have decided, without discussing it, that they are comfortable being exactly where they are. On the first morning of October, exactly 7 months after Lily had knocked on the front door with a blue suitcase and a wooden music box, Nathaniel drove her to the estate's back field where the grass had gone golden at the edges and the sky above Connecticut held the particular clarity that comes only in autumn. He had arranged something with the help of a professor at the university 2 towns over, which had required 3 phone calls and a donation to the astronomy department that he considered among the better uses of money he had made in recent memory. In the center of the field stood a telescope considerably larger than anything available at a retail store. Lily stopped walking when she saw it. She stood completely still for a long moment in the way she stood when something required her full evaluation. Then she looked at him. He said that the professor had agreed to come on Friday evenings through the winter to teach her how to use it properly, and that if she decided she wanted to pursue astronomy seriously, there were programs she could apply to beginning as early as next autumn. She looked at the telescope again. The autumn wind moved through the grass around them. A crow called from the maple tree at the field's edge. She walked to the telescope and rested one hand against its barrel with the careful attention she brought to everything that mattered to her. Then she looked up at the October sky, which was still bright and offered nothing to observe yet, and then she looked back at him. "Thank you," she said. He told her she was welcome. She turned back to the telescope. He stood a few feet behind her in the autumn field and watched her begin figuring out how everything worked, which she did with the focused independence that had been her consistent quality from the first moment she had crossed his threshold. And he thought about a letter that had asked him to show one small person that the world was worth loving back, and he thought that this was what it looked like when you kept a promise you had not known you were making until the moment it was asked of you. The afternoon light moved across the field. Lily made careful adjustments to the telescope's angle and wrote something in her notebook. A red-tailed hawk crossed the sky above them, and she tracked it briefly with her eyes before returning to her work. The estate was visible in the distance, its windows catching the late sun, its grounds settled and unhurried under the October afternoon. Nathaniel put his hands in his jacket pockets and stayed where he was for a while longer, because there was nowhere else he needed to be, and because some moments are complete enough that the only right thing to do is remain inside them until they are finished.